Sorry about that. I had to do some stuff before I could go live again. I really don't like it when there are people in the chat room and I'm doing something on the computer and not paying attention to you. You have other things to do. I open the door and then I'm going to record the show right away. There we go. I shouldn't even be here at the office, but I'm so behind on stuff this week. It's not even funny anymore. All right, I'm just going to press record, and then we're good to go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of my weekly podcast. I'm Father Roderick. It's a nice day outside. Finally, we had a lot of rain this morning, but now the skies are blue. The sun is shining, and I'm sitting behind a microphone at 7 p.m. in the evening. This is not what I planned. This episode of the podcast is brought to you thanks to my patrons, and thanks to them, I can do this advertisement free. I get so sick and tired of all these podcasts that I've lined up, and then after 10 minutes, before we continue with this very exciting topic that you want to hear all about, let me first talk about, and then something that I have no interest in. Anyway, thank you so much, dear patrons, over at patreon.com/FatherRoderick. I love you guys.
Do you know what's going on? This is what's happening in your world.
Face it, Catholics rule. We got Boston, South America, the good part of Ireland, and we're making serious inroads in Mozambique, baby.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
This week is seriously messed up, and everything does not go according to plan. And most of it has to do with the situation of my parents. My father has been operated upon. He had a number of arteries in his leg that were clotted up. And the intervention came way too late. There's one of the doctors, I think, made the wrong assessment or just didn't speed things up. And then my mom has all sorts of respiratory problems. The worst thing is that my father is super confused. And this has been going on for several months already, but it has worsened a lot in the past 2 weeks. So from the looks of it, it's severe dementia. Which is problematic because he's now at the hospital and he wants to get out of bed, and my mother doesn't have the energy to take care of him, and he needs to get back on his feet. And it's all very complicated because, doctors and waiting lists and whatnot. And it's very frustrating to not be there and to be able to take charge of things because, of course, my mom has to do that herself. But sometimes I'm thinking, if I were in that situation, I would do this and this and that, and I get very impatient. But of course, I just have to sit and wait, and that makes you feel very powerless. So, I can always pray. That's one thing. But because of that, Sunday I had to go to my parents. I gave my father the anointment of the sick. We'll talk a little bit about that, what that means and what that is later on in this show. And that's on top of the kind of the usual fatigue in the weekend with the masses and the running around in the parish. So yesterday was a messed up day. It was just all sorts of things that you have to kind of put aside because you're focusing on your parents, and then you have to kind of see if you can get back on track. And not only am I a program maker, but I'm also running the organization here. So it's just a lot of people that want to know things, and we have to discuss things, and it's hard to do business when you're also distracted by the things that are actually much more important than work. But life goes on as well, so it's a balancing act right now. Anyway, I'm hoping for better times. At least I felt I had to just do my shows now, even though I'm not supposed to be at the office right now. Normally on Tuesdays I only work in the morning. But now I'm sitting here at 7 p.m. That's how long I've been working overtime. Now, tomorrow I'm not going to work. I'm going to go for a very long walk. I'm still training for that walking event in July. And I have to be able to walk 40 kilometers for 4 days in a row. And just a few days ago, I walked 54 kilometers in one day. It took me 11 hours, or a little more than 11 hours. But that's just one day. I need to be able to walk that long distances for several days. So I need to up my training. And then walking takes a ton of time. Literally. I mean, if I take my bike, I can do it in like a third of the time or even less. Walking is super time consuming. I basically have to invest an entire day in that training, and then ideally I would walk the next day another 40 kilometers just to get the hang of those long distances. But I don't think I can do that because there's so much work waiting for me as well. Oh well. We'll figure it out. Let's talk movies. That is my saving grace. Literally, sometimes after a day with so many impressions and worries and work, I just need to sit down in front of the television and shut off my brain and watch some TV and watch some movies. So I've got a number of them that I want to review here today on the show. And of course, we need to talk about something that we skipped last week, and that is the end of Game of Thrones, because that's a thing, you know?
How do you not like movies?
They're predictable. Like, the guy gets the girl, and that kid sees dead people, and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You know, you need a movie education. You need a movication. I'm gonna give it to you.
All right. Well, the end of Game of Thrones, no spoilers, by the way, and I can't because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen this entire season. I'm still somewhere stuck in the 6th season, so I still have a lot of ground to cover before I can get to the finale. I heard that some fans are very disappointed, angry, others say it's fine. Well, the usual. The internet has an opinion, and people tend to be very negative about things. So, of course, it's kind of always troubling. It's always difficult to end a franchise that is so popular. And Game of Thrones is just one of those things. It's like the last thing we had, an epic TV series that everybody watched, was Lost. And remember the feedback on the finale of Lost. People hated it. I thought it was brilliant. I loved it. But a lot of fans were super disappointed. The same happened to a lesser extent with Battlestar Galactica. That was not for everyone. It was certainly a big science fiction show, but not as big as Game of Thrones. And also the ending of Battlestar Galactica was, for a lot of people, a reason to complain. I, again, thought it was brilliant what they did. I loved it. And so I don't know how I'm going to react to Game of Thrones. But what I can talk about in this episode is who is going to sit on the throne now that Game of Thrones is over? What is going to be the next big television series? And of course, there are a lot of streaming platforms that at least want to try to put something in the place of Game of Thrones. Perhaps the biggest contender in the near future is going to be the new Middle-earth series that is being produced by Amazon. They spend probably the biggest amount of money ever spent on the rights to that story, and they're currently developing the series. They're still writing for it. I heard that they actually hired one of the lead writers for Game of Thrones, also one of the writers that wrote the more popular episodes. Even if in this last season, apparently there was one episode that everybody loved. Well, that writer, forgot his name, is now hired to pen some episodes, or perhaps even write more, I don't know, the basic outline for that Middle-earth series. So it looks to me that everything is in place for this to be a massive success. They're going to film a lot of the series in Scotland, which is also very cool, because now I don't have to go on pilgrimage all the way to New Zealand to visit the locations, but I can just hop over the ocean, over the North Sea, and go see the Middle Earth for myself. So I'm excited about that. But that's not the only television series that we will get and that maybe becomes as popular as Game of Thrones, because this Middle Earth series is scheduled for 2021. But in 2020, in November, we already get June. This is not the first time that June, this epic science fiction saga is turned into a television series. We had Children of Dune. Of course, there's the Dune movie. None of them are very successful. This is a very difficult story to visualize. But it looks to me that with this Dune television series, they may actually get it right. And I'm eagerly looking forward to seeing what they do with the franchise. Then we've got Apple TV, and Apple, I should say, and for their Apple TV Plus platform, or what is it, service, they are going to bring us a television series based on the Foundation series. I think it's a number of books written by Isaac Asimov, very loved by science fiction fans. But it's Apple and Apple TV Plus. And really, there was this weird presentation in was it in February, where they were announcing basically nothing. It was a whole bunch of hot air, and they couldn't show us a single trailer. And they just had a lot of celebrities standing on the podium and saying, well, we're excited to be doing a TV show for Apple. Yay! And then it ended with Oprah. And it was like, Oprah was just standing there and probably thinking, I'm getting a lot of money for this, so whatever. I'll just be Oprah. But afterwards, crickets. Crickets. Have you ever heard anything about Apple TV Plus? Nothing. I just don't understand Apple. It's so weird. Like today, at least the day that I'm recording this, they've announced like another iPod, like a new iPod with a slightly newer chip in it, an A10. But it doesn't even have Touch ID, and it looks like a device from 10 years ago. It's like, where is the innovation? Yeah, it's cheap. Well, cheaper. It's cheaper than their phones, but it's still $250, I think, and then 32 gigabytes. They dare to sell a device in 2019 with only 32 megabytes of memory. And then if you want to have more memory, of course you can't use an SD card. You have to pay like another $100. I'm just so done with that marketing strategy. Really. Really. I don't know how they get away with it. Anyway, we're not talking Apple here. We're talking TV shows. The one series that I personally am super excited about, and it looks amazing, there are a lot of photos now on the web, is the prequel series to one of my all-time favorite fantasy movies. It is the amazing Dark Crystal. I saw that movie when I was in high school, watched it countless times afterwards. I loved that world. The world building was amazing. The Jim Henson creations were fantastic. There's never, ever been anything like it after that. Until now, because Netflix is developing this new TV series. And what I'm super excited about is that they decided to do everything with puppets. They wanted this prequel series to look exactly like the movie, creating this visual continuity, but also this whole, the world is still the same world, and they went practical effects. Apparently, it's a gargantuan task, and the director has said in a recent interview that he only sleeps like 2 hours per night, because this series has to be ready in August of this year. Amazing. It looks amazing. I think it's going to be amazing. I love that world. And then, of course, there is this rumored Game of Thrones prequel. Apparently, it's currently called The Long Night or something like that. But the weird thing is, the prequel takes place 1,000 or more than 1,000 years before the events in Game of Thrones. So I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if people are going to be interested if it is like the prehistoric times of the Game of Thrones world. There will be no Winterfell. There's not going to be the wall is not going to be there. Perhaps this is kind of leading up to the building of the wall, but I don't know. We've seen so many prequels fail lately. I don't know if it's a good strategy. Maybe a sequel would be a better idea, but perhaps they didn't get the rights. I don't know. Let me know what series you are looking forward to, and perhaps I just missed a couple of them, but. Man, I always like to get excited about what's coming up next. And then, of course, I've almost forgot to mention we've got Disney Plus, and all the awesome live action Star Wars series that they're going to bring us. That, I don't know, that may be a surprise hit. Who knows? I don't know what to think of that, because we've never seen live action television series based on Star Wars. So it's going to be very, very interesting, all these developments. And of course, we're going to pay so much monthly fees for all these platforms, which all bring us this awesome television. We're actually paying more in the future, I think, than in the past, when people had to buy these cable subscriptions or satellite subscriptions. That was super expensive, but now it's actually getting more expensive. I also wanted to talk briefly about three things that I've been watching on Netflix. First of all, a television series that my niece recommended to me. My youngest nephew, Ezra, has been diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and of course that is always difficult to deal with for my parents, but also for his brother and sister. He's a great guy, but he's got these meltdowns, and he has very special talents, and also some quirks that you need to deal with. And so we were talking about Netflix, and these kids, the two oldest ones, are now hitting puberty and watching a lot of TV. And so I talked a little bit with my oldest nephew, and he's like, I'm watching Arrow, and he was all excited that I was watching Arrow as well. And then my niece said, yeah, you have to watch the series called Atypical. And I didn't know why she recommended it, but yesterday I started to watch it, and it's amazing. It's a television series that stars in the main role an autistic boy. And it is delightfully done. It's so well done. It shows you, it gives you a lot of understanding of how he thinks. And he's very literal, and sometimes that's super hilarious. But they don't make fun of that, but they portray it as it is. And it's so recognizable and so well acted. And then you see also how the family reacts to this and how they deal with it or don't deal with it. It's a really, really good series. I've seen 2 episodes so far. I love it. It's called Atypical. Then I also watched a movie, a Netflix movie. I haven't seen the ending yet, but I love it so far. I've watched, I think, 2/3 of it. And then I fell asleep because I was so exhausted. It's called Rim of the World. You can't miss it. It's like on the front page of Netflix. And Rim of the World feels very much like a cross between the War of the Worlds and the Close Encounters of the Third Kind and the Goonies and Stranger Things. And it features a number of kids that are going on a summer camp. And while they are on that summer camp, the camp itself is called Rim of the World, all hell breaks loose because the Earth is invaded by aliens and they destroy like every major city. And these kids are somehow get into the possession of a very important artifact that can maybe solve this alien invasion. And that story tells what happens to these kids. And it's got a lot of tropes in it, but that's why I like it. It feels, I think it takes place in this day and age, but it feels like classic, 80s, it has the same vibe of Stranger Things. And the interaction between the kids is great. I really like the actors that they've chosen for this group, this band of kids. And almost everything that happens to them is cliche, but that's why it's so delightful. I love it. Go check it out. It's called Rim of the World. And then the final movie that I saw is called Isn't It Romantic? And the premise of the movie is awesome. The execution is sometimes a bit lackluster and a bit predictable, but it was still so funny. So this tells the story about a woman working in an office, and she is totally past romantic comedy. She hates romantic comedies because she's basically always experiencing that life is not like a romantic comedy. And then she gets involved in an accident and she wakes up inside a romantic comedy. The entire world around her has been turned into this kind of La La Land with everybody always dancing and singing. And she is like, what I don't want to be here. And life is not, she's trying to convince all the people around her that are part of this romantic comedy that life is not like a romantic comedy. And then, of course, she learns some lessons about love and about, missing the most important things in her life. And, well, you'll have to see the ending for yourself. But I thought it was hilarious, and it's very well done. Visually, it looks amazing. And it shows you how much also the world of romantic comedies consists of tropes. And I had a lot of fun watching this movie, and I highly recommend you go check it out. Let's take a look at the peculiar bunch here.
Catholics rock!
Here at the Peculiar Bunch, we're always happy to tell you everything you always wanted to know about Catholics and their strange traditions, but you were afraid to ask.
Catholics can be a peculiar bunch. No meat on Friday.
Oh, meat? What do they eat? Light bulbs?
No, we don't eat light bulbs, but we have these things called sacraments, and I think it's time to talk to Homer about the meaning of them.
Man, you guys got more crazy rules than Blockbuster Video.
Got this little plastic Homer Simpson. I think he even makes a sound. Or no. Actually, he used to make sound, but the battery is empty. That's a shame. I think I have some other... This one should work. Let's try. Let's see. Homer, does Bart Simpson work? I think these were part of a Happy Meal, and they were sent to me a couple of years ago. And I may have used Homer Simpson too often because he does. I think he says dough or something like that. Dough. Anyway, this past Sunday, I went to see my father before he was operated upon to give him the anointment of the sick. And that is one of the 7 sacraments of the Catholic Church, and it is a very beautiful sacrament. Now, sometimes this sacrament, when you propose it to older people, they get they panic because for a while this sacrament was distributed almost as a last sacrament at the very last moment, and it was also because people would receive confession. And so they would postpone that till the very last moment, so you'd be sure that they would go straight to heaven. Now, that is actually not what the origin of the sacrament intended. This is based on the New Testament. In one of the letters in the New Testament, the apostle talks about that in case of it's one of those letters written to the earliest Christian communities, that when someone is ill, they have to call the elders, the presbyters in Greek, so the priest. I would translate that with priests, and the priests have to pray over that person and anoint them with oil, and that is still 2,000 years later exactly what we do in the sacrament of the anointment of the sick. We anoint people with oil. Oil is a very strong symbol in Catholic liturgy. We use oil in various sacraments. For instance, the sacrament of baptism. The child or the adult, it depends on who is baptized, receives an anointment that symbolizes the gift of the Holy Spirit that is given in the sacrament of baptism. So baptism has, of course, the symbol of the water, and the water itself is essential to that sacrament. But the anointment with oil is also part of that sacrament, as is the imposition of the hands. And the oil also is used in, and this is chrism oil, which means it's a special blend of oil and herbs and all sorts of fragrant scents for the sacrament of confirmation, and also for the sacrament of confirmation. For those of you that are not Catholic, is the the third sacrament of what we call sacrament of initiation. So those are the sacraments that make you a full member of the Catholic Church. So baptism, the Eucharist, First Communion, and confirmation. So this again, the anointment with the oil is the symbol of the Holy Spirit that is given to the people that are confirmed, and it's used in the sacrament of ordination as well. The hands are my hands were anointed with chrism oil because they're being dedicated to God's work, basically. And regular olive oil, but that has been blessed by the bishop, is used in the sacrament of the anointment of the sick. Now, what I like about it is that it is a sacrament that is meant to express the closeness of God to people in need. It's not to be given to anyone who has a cough or something like that. It's meant for people that are seriously ill, and it wants to convey to that person that God is near, even sacramentally present and close to that person who is in need and may, have suffer severe consequences of the illness. And so, what I did was you pray together briefly. There's a moment of asking forgiveness, which I always think is very beautiful. Sometimes in life, people hurt each other, but they never make good. They kind of tend to postpone it, or time heals all wounds and everything. But sometimes in situations of severe illness, it is such a good thing to be able to ask each other forgiveness for the lack of love, for the harshness, for everything that can go wrong in relationships. And then there is usually a short reading from the Gospel or from the Bible. And then there is the imposition of the hand. So I went to my father, and this is kind of really strange to do that because I'm the son, and it at the same time it's such an intimate sacrament. And my father was nervous about it, I could tell. And since he was also a little bit confused, I asked him a week ago if he wanted to receive it before he went to the hospital. And then he was very clear, and he's like, yes, I really want to receive that sacrament. But that day, on Sunday, he was a little bit more confused and hazy. So he was like, is the cardinal coming now? And do I have to confess my sins to the cardinal? He kept talking about not the current cardinal, but the previous cardinal, Cardinal Simonis, that he knew very well. So he was like, no, Dad, I'm just going to do it myself. But it's so I put my hands on his head and I pray in silence for a while. It's a very impressive moment. And of course, the imposition of the hands is a sign of protection. It's not my hands, and it's not a medical procedure, but it expresses this closeness of God to those who suffer, just like Jesus was always with the sick. And when people needed help, he went there and he did the same. He put his hands on the heads of the sick, and he tried to heal them. And then the second element of the sacrament is olive oil. I put that on my thumb, and I make a cross on the forehead of my father and in the palms of his hand. And then there is a short prayer that expresses that may God help you in your illness, and can't recall the exact formula. It's in a little booklet that I take with me all the time. I'm very bad with these formulas. I always forget them. Anyway, very simple sacrament. But of course, the anointment of the head, that's the place where your memories are, where your main functions are. The head, it's what you use your head. You use it to see the world, to talk to the world, to taste the world, to listen, to smell. Like all our senses are. Our most important senses are located in the head, and God wants to bless and heal those whatever is wrong in our heads, and especially because my father shows signs of dementia, kind of makes it extra special. And then you also anoint the hands, because the hands are what a person uses to work. Those hands are very fragile, and my father is 77 years old and very used up I think also by his lifestyle a little bit. But those hands have carried me as a baby. those hands lifted me up when I fell and I was crying. Those hands were caressing and it's those same hands that have done so much for us that God blesses. And with that, he also blesses the work of our hands. And it's a very touching moment. And then we're all in silence there and praying, and all of a sudden all the dogs start barking, and just the dogs don't care at all for the sacred silence of that sacrament. And everybody is like, "Oh, what's going on? The dogs! Please silence the dogs!" Big panic. Oh well. As I mentioned on the walk, faith is supposed to be part of our day-to-day lives. You don't need to be in a cathedral for God to be present in your life. He can also be present when all the dogs are barking and people are taking pictures during the anointment of the sick. That was a first. Give it to my family to do that. Like, I've done so many anointments of the sick, and I've been a priest for so many years. This is the very first time that people took photos during the anointment of the sick. Both my mom and my sister. Like, okay, right. Anyway, so that is in a nutshell the anointment of the sick. It ends with a short blessing. It's super simple. I like that because it doesn't need God doesn't need complicated rituals and lots of words and homilies and stuff. In those moments where, well, in this case, my father is so fragile and so confused and old, and maybe in his last years, to be together as a family in simplicity, to me it was a really a beautiful moment where such a simple sign, such a simple sacrament can be so powerful, and not just for my father, but also for my mom and for the rest of the family. So my father has been operated. I've talked a little bit about it also in my show, The Walk. He still is in a lot of pain, very confused, and it's uncertain what will happen now because lots of worries. We need to talk books. That's another great...
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night.
I'm not going to interrupt Tony Stark here.
Am I the only one who did the reading?
Books are another way to sometimes escape the kind of the hectic life, and I'm almost done. I was so hoping that I could finish the book this weekend, but I'm almost done with The Eye of the World, of the Robert Jordan series, The Wheel of Time. And again, I said it last week, and I keep repeating it. It's just such an awesome book. I can't wait to read on. But I also bought a series, 5 books of a series that I've never read, but that is very popular in English-speaking countries. It's called Percy Jackson. You may have heard of The Lightning Thief. That book is probably the most well-known book of the series, and has been also turned into a movie, and I think that there's even a second movie based on the second book. But they were on sale on Amazon, on the Kindle store. I retweeted it and posted it on Facebook in case you're interested. And I think this is about a boy in our days, so in this time, who is transported, I think, to the mythological world of Greece, and he turns out to be a son of one of the gods, I think. Very interesting premise, and the books are very popular, and I guess The Lightning Thief probably has to do something with Thor, the god of thunder and lightning. I don't know. But I may actually, before I continue the next book, the second book in the Eye of the World or in the Wheel of Time series, I may actually read the Lightning Thief and watch the movie. So stay tuned. If I do that, I'll review it on the show. And if you have any other book tips or series, let me know, because I'm always in for some book tips. Although I think I've gathered so many Kindle books now that I have to live 3 lives to read it all. I got to get into fast reading to finish a little more books than I currently read. Oh well. And then we've got all these movies and TV shows to watch, some of which have to do with science fiction.
I see aliens.
little aliens from outer space.
And how are things in outer Plutonia?
How many times have I told you not to wear your space boots in the house?
Go to shape I'm in, you can donate my body to science fiction.
Get your suit on! We need you!
Well, science fiction, also one of my favorite passions. These are great times to love science fiction because there are so many cool things coming up. First of all, I want to briefly talk about a campaign that is now doing the rounds on the internet that has to do with a sequel to the Solo Star Wars movie. Now, wasn't the biggest hit. I mean, it did fine compared to other movies, but for Disney, it was certainly not the success that they hoped it would be. And they had a very troubled production process. And so I think this is one of the first times in history that Star Wars actually lost money. Now, I'm not worried about Disney. They still make a ton of money on the franchise. But it was very surprising to see that even though it was a good movie, I thought, in the end, it turned out to be a good movie. They brought in Ron Howard, of course, to kind of save the whole thing. And I liked it. I really also liked Aaron Reich's portrayal of Han Solo, a young Han Solo, as well as, what's her name from Game of Thrones, who played his girlfriend. And it ended with a cliffhanger. You know, it just so clearly was set up to lead into a sequel and perhaps even another movie with these actors. And Aaron Reich has said that he signed a contract for 3 movies. So I guess that's true probably for the other actors as well, except for the ones that die in this movie. But now all of a sudden there's a campaign with the hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen that really gets some traction and also some media attention, which gets me excited as well because I know that these studios listen to the fans. They try to listen to the fans. And first of all, Ron Howard reacted to the trending hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen. And his response was very brief. He replied on Twitter. I don't know why they bother with Twitter nowadays, but anyway. He said, smiley face. And he retweeted a photo with people wearing sweatshirts with Make Solo 2 Happen logo on it. So, but then Lawrence Kasdan, or actually John Kasdan, who is the son of Lawrence Kasdan, who is one of the writers of Empire Strikes Back, and I think he did the two of them. So father and son worked together on the plot, on the script for Solo. I think that was a great combination, and I want to see more of their Star Wars stories. And John Kasdan is perhaps even a bigger Star Wars fan than his father, even though his father, penned the script for Empire Strikes Back. How is it possible that his son is even more into Star Wars? But anyway, he replied on Twitter, "I'm beyond and grateful and galvanized by the Make Solo 2 Happen energy on Twitter today. It means so much to everyone involved, and your enthusiasm makes it possible for us to keep advocating for it." So that's good to know that they're advocating for it, because the maker knows there is a war story set in a galaxy far, far away that's yet to be told. I like that. He's teasing something. They clearly gave it some thought. They clearly know what they want to do with this sequel, and they're campaigning for it. And I really hope that the fans are going to endorse this, because this story deserves a sequel. And maybe if Disney is nervous about what it will do at the box office and are afraid that they will get negative backlash, by all means, do it on Disney+. Netflix gives us these straight-to-TV movies, and they're pretty good. Well, I would say just use your Disney+ platform to give us a sequel, or turn it into a TV series. Why not? You have the actors, and everyone would watch it. I'm positive, because it's got the Millennium Falcon, it's got Chewie, it's got Han Solo. Do it. Make it so. As long as you don't put Jar Jar in it. Alrighty. That is not the only thing that got me excited this past week. Right after I finished recording last week's podcast, we saw the teaser trailer for the new Picard series that is currently being filmed because we saw the first footage. And I was shocked and also a bit worried when I saw it, but the end frame made me super excited again. I wish I had recorded my reaction because there were a lot of emotions in just 1 minute. But you see the vineyards, and you see the footsteps of clearly Jean-Luc Picard. So he's gone back to probably France to live as a farmer, and he even creates his own wine, Chateau Picard. I was looking for is there a year on those bottles, but I couldn't see it. And then we hear the question. Someone asks him a question. So why did you leave Starfleet? Thereby hinting, of course, at something that we haven't seen in The Next Generation, or in Deep Space Nine, or anything else, or in the movies. But he is retired, and I'm pretty sure that question will lead to the call to action, that he's been called back into duty, and he has to save the day because, of course, this is Jean-Luc Picard. He can't retire. And there are lots of other people that can make wine. But anyway, the reason that I was a little bit worried is I just hope that this is not going to be a series about Farmer Picard, and the only thing that he's going to talk and be worried about is vineyards. Because, well, I don't need to watch Star Trek for that. But exciting to see the first footage, and it looks good. I'm excited. I'm really excited. And then also, right after I finished recording the show, we got the first pretty long Terminator Dark Fate trailer, and that too was what did I think of it? I mean, I'm excited that they bring back the original actors. I'm excited that they kind of skip over all those failed sequels, and that they're going back to Sarah Connor's story. I'm even excited to see Arnold Schwarzenegger back. But on the other hand, I was looking at it. It was like, yeah, they've been there. They've done that. We've seen this already. So it's more of the same. I was expecting something new. I don't know why. There's this one Terminator that is kind of the sequel, I guess, or the follow-up model to the liquid metal Terminator. And this time he's made out of some kind of black dark stuff, but it has the same morphic qualities as the liquid metal. And it all looks good. It looks great. But it looks just like what we've seen before. So my guess is they're playing it very, very safe, and this is going to be a nostalgia-driven movie. The fans of Terminator 2, those are the fans that they're targeting. They want to see this movie because, well, it's just like the olden days. And, well, we've seen it before. Nostalgia can be a very powerful way to sell movies and to sell stuff in general.
We are on the cutting edge of technology.
Wow. Well, what does that mean?
Just plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device. And it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build... Whoa.
Well, all your technology stuff, it just ends in disaster.
But there is one more thing.
Today in our technology segment, I want to briefly talk about streaming on YouTube. I've talked about it at length during this week's episode of The Walk, my experiences in streaming to YouTube, which I'm actually doing right now. As we speak, I'm streaming this not to Facebook, what I used to do, but I'm streaming this to my little YouTube community. And I love these guys and girls. They're amazing. And I meet them several times a week. I either stream Lego sets that I build, and it's a ton of fun. But I'm also dabbling into streaming video games. And just the other day, I finally managed to get things working while streaming a game on my computer. Now, there is an entire universe surrounding those YouTubers that I completely missed out on. And I need to kind of start from scratch, learning how to do this well, and what the dynamics are of this relationship with a live YouTube audience. And one of the things that I do, that I don't do while I'm recording a podcast, is interacting. So there are a lot of people right now in the chat, and they're posting questions and asking, well, why doesn't Father Roderick react to what we post? That's kind of the handicap of doing a podcast. I need to talk primarily to the podcast audience that listens to this after the fact. So it's not interactive. It's a different type of relationship, a different type of audience interaction. So I can't assume that my podcast listeners they're not part of this YouTube audience that's currently watching this stream on YouTube. So if I would constantly talk to the people in the chat room, the podcast listeners would feel left out. It's like that's something that I wasn't a part of. So they feel, and I don't want anyone listening to the podcast to feel that they're excluded from something. That's why I hardly ever make reference to visual elements in the stream. And if I do, I make sure that there is an audio component. Like an example is the little Simpsons figurines. I demonstrated them, but I also try to describe what I do. What I hate is when people have a podcast that they're streaming and then they're saying, just look at this. And then they don't describe what I'm supposed to look at, and I'm just listening to the audio, so I don't have a mental picture, and thereby I kind of disengage. So it's a different type of animal. But what I love about YouTube streaming is the fact that everything that I do is based on audience interaction. Actually, the gaming and the Lego, it's fun, but it's almost secondary to the interaction with the people in the chat. And it's such a lively community, and we talk about so many different things. For me, it's a joy to do those streams because it's like hanging out with friends. And but of course, in order to do that well, being the media priest that I am, I want to up my game. I wanted to make it look better, and I'm currently using my old Logitech webcam, and it's all very primitive, and I know that I can do so much better audio-wise, video-wise, with lights. So what I decided to do is I want to build a YouTube studio at home, because this is something that I don't really associate with the work that I do. This is something more of a personal nature, and I just like to have that ability to do YouTube streaming, but I want it to look just as good as the other YouTubers. And it's not rocket science. I mean, I do more complicated stuff in my professional life as a program maker. But it will probably require me to buy some tech and to put some things in place. First of all, what do you need for streaming? You need software to do that. And I'm currently using a Mac to stream. When I'm doing the Lego sets, I also use my little trusty old MacBook Air. 11-inch MacBook Air. It's a tiny little device, but it works really well for live streaming. But when I'm streaming video games, I need to use my PC because, well, the Mac is not powerful enough to do decent gaming. And even my PC is getting old. I think it's an i7, so that's why I can still use it, because those chips are so good. But it is the first generation i7, and we're now at the 8th or 9th generation of chipsets, so it's still really out of date. I do have a pretty decent graphics card at 1060, so that one is good enough for modern day streaming. But I can feel that once I start streaming, then the computer is pushing its limits. Plus, I've placed a television screen on my desk for gaming, but when you attach a webcam on top of a television screen, it looks down on me from up above because the screen is so huge. So I need to figure out something else. One streamer gave me a tip that you have to attach the camera to the side of your screen. So that's something I could try, but I need to have something that I can screw onto the screen itself. Or I should do a multi-monitor setup where I can have one screen specifically for the comments. Because one of the issues that I encountered when I started streaming the games is that if the game is full screen, I can't read the comments. And the commenting and reacting to the viewers is essential for what I try to do on YouTube. So I'm going to go step by step. Another thing that's on my to buy list is a green screen, because I'm streaming from. I have a little insert with my face on it, but it's super simple to put a small green screen in place and light it well, and then I can just do like a cutout of my upper body for the commenting, just like you see with a lot of YouTubers. And those screens are not very expensive. There is a very good one. Actually, there's an entire set of hardware that is great for YouTube streaming, and it's all made by Elgato. And they have a foldable green screen that you can set it up in a few seconds. It's really brilliant, and it's made for gamers, actually. But I think I can also use it for my Lego videos, because I can just put it anywhere behind my chair, no matter where I sit. But in order to do green screen well, of course, you need to have good lighting on the green screen. That's always the biggest issue that streamers struggle with. How do you properly light your green screen without spending tons of money and having your room filled with lamps and softboxes and whatnot? Well, Elgato also has a key light that they sell, and it's amazing. It's just this rectangular kind of with rounded corners. Looks very cool. This light panel, you can change the color temperature of the light panel from very blue to almost yellow white. But it also connects via USB to your computer, so you can also program it. And you can screw it onto your desk. It has an arm, like a telescope arm, and it's got this diffused light, and it will light your face and the green screen pretty well from what I've seen in the videos online. So it is a tad expensive if you compare it to regular LED panels. It's $199, I think. But still, it's a very easy solution, and it's made for streamers. So I'm always like, well, it works very well together, so why not just spend a little bit more? Then at least I know that it's easy to use and it works. And then the third device from Elgato is what I've already bought and never used it so far. It's called the Stream Deck. And the Stream Deck is a small device. It's got a number of buttons that are programmable. And with those buttons, you can actually you can even start streaming. You can program it in such a way that you only have to press a button and it will automatically start a YouTube stream. But you can also put in like lower thirds or little animations or transitions. There are so many possibilities with that. That I think I'm going to set that up, not here in the studio where I originally wanted to use it, but I'm just going to use that in my home YouTube studio. And then another question that a lot of the people in the YouTube channel asked me is, why don't you play any music while you're building your Lego set? It's so quiet. And that's true. My life is very quiet. I like a quiet environment, but I can imagine that a little bit of background music kind of really ups the quality of the overall experience. The thing is, you can't really play copyright music. You can't play popular songs, or I can't just put on a playlist from Spotify or something like that, because a lot of these streaming platforms will have algorithms that detect copyrighted stuff, and they will either mute it, like on Twitch. They will just completely mute the entire audio, which is, of course, a disaster. And worse, YouTube will flag your channel, and if you do that a number of times, your entire channel gets deleted. And yesterday I told my YouTube audience, I don't want to take that risk, because I already had that problem a couple of years ago where my original YouTube channel was locked down by YouTube because of a copyright strike, which actually wasn't even my fault. It was some kind of a third party that claimed to have copyright ownership over something that was actually that I owned, and there was just no way to appeal and to remove the restrictions on the YouTube channel. So I decided to start a new YouTube channel, and I was so frustrated that I don't ever want to have that experience again. But there are a number of services that you can, but most of the best ones are still for money. So I think there's one that Peter McKinnon uses. Peter McKinnon is one of the very famous YouTubers. Talks a lot about cameras and stuff, but he recommended a service that is, I think, $10 if you use it for personal YouTube production. But then they have a catalog of 60,000 musical numbers that you can just use for whatever you want. You will never get a copyright strike. So I may want to look into that. YouTube also has a section with copyright music that I use a lot for my documentaries. The downside there is that it's track by track. So I'd need to download a lot of those tracks and queue them up and then play that playlist. And it's not the best music. So I'll look a little bit more into solutions for background music, because I think the YouTubers have the viewers have a point there. It needs a little bit of background music sometimes. And then let's see what else. Oh yes, of course. The final thing is you need software to stream. And on the Macs, I'm using Ecamm. I'm currently streaming using Ecamm, and that's great because you have a nice window with all the comments, and I have this big iMac with a 27-inch screen, so there's plenty of space for this kind of stuff. But on a PC, you have to use other software solutions because Ecamm is only for Mac OS. So I'm using OBS, which is freeware. It's public domain, or what is it, shareware? And we used to call it shareware, I think. And there is a version of OBS called Streamlabs, and it is very much targeted towards YouTube and Twitch streamers. It's free, and it's got a lot of cool little add-ons that you can use to interact with your audience. It's a little bit tricky to set up because I'm not used to working with OBS, so that will take me some time. But, I like a little challenge. Let's just see if I can get that running and set it up so that I want those streams to grow, and I want the YouTube audience to grow. And there's only one way to do that, and that is to entertain your audience and to make sure it looks great. Hey, I hope I've been able to entertain you for this for this hour. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you if you've been watching this live on YouTube. And I will see you next week. God bless. All right, that was a recording of the regular show, and now I'm going back to all your comments in the chat, and I'm going to respond to that in the after show. Hey, it's Father Roderick, and you're listening to the after show. It is the secret show for all my patron supporters. Not so secret because I'm also streaming this on YouTube. Please don't tell anyone else. But it's just for the people that are watching this live, and where I answer questions and where I sometimes can expand a little bit on stuff that I don't have time for in the regular show. So let's start with just going through the comments that have been posted and sometimes also questions in the chat, because this is YouTube, so there are always a lot of fun questions and unexpected things that people want to know. And that gives me an occasion to produce some more content. So Captain Cubecraft wants to know how old I am. That's a good question. I was born on the 5th of April of 1968. So I'm very ancient. I actually saw, as a baby, I saw the moon landing. I saw the first man on the moon. That's how old I am. So it means I'm 51. And most people don't think that I'm, they usually say, we thought you were younger. And that's probably because I'm still a geek. And being a geek is so good to stay young. I can recommend it to everyone. Behind me, Rust Bold Elite Plants vs. Zombies Garden 2. That's his actual screen name. It sees Master Yoda, and that's correct. Here in the IKEA Billy cupboard behind me is a little booklet of things that I've learned from Star Wars, and Yoda is heavily featured in that book. Aiden is inquiring about the background music, and I said that if you use copyright music in a live stream, you'll get tagged or flagged, and was wondering about the music that I use in my regular podcast. Well, all those tunes that you hear are made with copyright-free music. Most of it is from YouTube. The song, the tune that I've been using, this is the only jingle that survived from the very first year of me podcasting, is the jingle for the Peculiar Bunch. This one.
Catholics rock!
Now, of course, the clips are from The Simpsons, but the music is not from The Simpsons. It sounds like The Simpsons, but it has actually been composed and produced by my brother. He made this 15 years ago, I think. And I told him that I wanted to have something that sounded like The Simpsons, but of course couldn't be The Simpsons tune because I didn't want any copyrighted music. So he made this on a computer using only digital instruments. So this is a virtual orchestra that you hear. And I still use it until today. Then people are reacting to what I told about my family and my father being in the hospital right now, and Meme ASMR says, don't feel pressure to do streams or videos. Family is so much more important, and I appreciate that. But as I also explained, for me, doing these live streams, especially the YouTube streams, is also relaxing. It also takes my mind off the worries, and it's just fun to do something simple and just to have fun and building something with Lego or playing a video game. So it helps me. Meme ASMR also watched The Secret Life of Pets 2, the sequel to that awesome DreamWorks animated movie about the secret lives of your pets whenever there are no humans around. And according to this viewer, it is a very good movie. So I'm looking forward to it. Now, people are always like, can we talk about Star Wars? And that, of course, normally in a live stream, I'd gladly talk Star Wars anytime. But for the podcast, I have to make sure that I appeal to my entire audience, and not everyone is as much into Star Wars as some of us. So that's why the show itself, the podcast itself, has so many different topics. It's basically a hodgepodge, something for everyone. Adam Wright loves June, and I love it too. Jamie reacts to my comments on Apple, and especially the kind of the lack of innovation lately. And Jamie says, I'm so anti-Apple. It's all hot air, no sustenance. I like my apples juicy. Well, I'm not against Apple, and Apple does make good stuff. I mean, the phones are great quality. Their app environment is unparalleled, and it's in that way unrivaled, I guess. That's why they get away with it. But I'm also feeling oftentimes that Apple is playing it way too safe. And instead of leading, they're following. And they're really falling behind. They don't innovate. And whereas Apple used to be this company that everybody looked towards, is like, show us the future. I mean, I remember those Think Different clips, and it was so innovative. But now Apple is like overpriced, been there, done that, and everyone else does the same, and also flawed. They have a lot of things lately that don't really become a success, and it's just by the fact, I think, that Apple is so big in the United States that they can still make a ton of money. But I wonder if that's not going to end one of these days. There are so many other, especially with their services, their move towards the services and their Apple Plus. I got a bad feeling about that. They dabbled into TV production a while ago with their what was it, Planet of the Apps, and that was just horror. That was so terrible. And it's like the people in charge that okayed that series are still. Tim Cook has no taste for television, I tell you. So I got a bad feeling about that. And if it's going to be, they didn't even give us pricing for that video service. I guess they're just going to capitalize on the current Apple owners, and that they will, just as in the same way that they all went with Apple Music, that they're going to go for TV. But for TV, there's so much competition. I don't know. Anyway. Let's see, what else? Did you like the new Aladdin? Spectacular Spider-Man wants to know. Wow, I didn't know Spider-Man was in the chat. I liked it. I didn't love it. And I gave a very detailed review last week in my podcast. And if you want to hear it, you may want to go to Trideo.com. That's TRIDEO.com. And then click on the image with the genie, the Will Smith genie on it, and then you can listen to my take. It's somewhere around, I think, the 7-minute mark. The review starts. Spider-Man can't wait for Legion and Black Mirror to return in June. Yes, I don't know about Legion because I've never seen it, but Black Mirror is amazing. Jamie asks, do you think they will make an Obi-Wan TV series? I hope they will. I really hope they will. Apparently, there's one series in development that they haven't announced yet, so who knows? Let's see. Brenda is actually excited about the Game of Thrones prequel because they're supposedly going into more of the lore and magic around the Children of the Forest and the Walkers. Yeah, maybe interesting. I don't know. Jen loves the podcast. That's cool. And PKGKRB Power says, hello, Father, could you please say a prayer for my family back in Australia? Patrick Riley and his family, and also the Royal Children's Hospital in Australia. Thank you and God bless. Yes, we will certainly do that. And I say we because when you post that in the chat, I know there are several people that are going to pray for you and for your family. Inge missed out on the oil during her baptism. Yeah, that's true, because Inge is now a Catholic, but she was baptized in the Protestant church. And they don't use the oil. They have no anointment. It's just a water baptism. It is still a valid baptism. You don't miss out on anything. But I like it that we have that in our Catholic sacrament. Auke says, I'm not a believer, but I think you're a cool guy and you like Star Wars, and me too. And I heard some Christians say that it's all from the devil, Harry Potter and Star Wars and whatnot. This is a fun podcast, and good luck. Well, thank you so much, Auke. I'm glad you enjoy it. And yeah, some Christians are very hesitant when it comes to fantasy and fairy tales and Star Wars. I'm not one of those Christians, as you may have gathered by now. PKGKRB says, my brother had the anointment of the sick when he was in a car accident, and he's now alive. A blessing indeed. And we're also praying for your father. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Jen says, we had a novena, which is 9 days of prayer in, I assume, the parish. And I missed the day that we had this sacrament. I really could do with it. Well, if you're ill and you need the sacrament of the anointment of the sick, you can always ask the priest personally. And if it's a valid reason, if you're seriously ill and you want that sacrament, the priest actually cannot refuse it. Priest cannot refuse sacraments, unless, of course, that there is no valid reason for the person to ask for the sacrament. Also, people reacting to my feeling of powerlessness when with my father, being so confused and everything. Here's a reaction that says, all you can do is tell your dad, like I did, I love you, Dad, and thank you for all you have done. My dad's last words to me were, I'm proud of you, son. Wow, that is the most beautiful thing that you can hear, right? Brenda says, thank you for sharing your experience with your father and family. I'll be praying for all of you. I lost my mom 2 years ago, and I'm so grateful that I was able to be there with her at the end. Yeah. Thank you so much for that feedback. We need an Obi-Wan film. Maybe. I think we need an Obi-Wan TV series. Scream Perez asks, what do you think about the allegations that are thrown to the Catholic Church, not only in Poland, but all over the world, about the pedophilia scandals? And whether I've seen the film, he's referring to a movie that is currently creating a lot of uproar in Poland that is showing the life of a priest who is actually abusing people and I think getting away with it. And it also shows all the kind of the complicitness of the church and the people responsible in the church, but not acting, not going to the police. And in Poland, of course, this is only now starting to emerge. But I've been predicting years ago already that in countries like Poland, where the church has been very powerful, and where it's a very Catholic, it used to be a very Catholic country, and so people trusted the church, that whenever you have a church that is so present and when there is so much power that is not being monitored, there is going to be abuse. Abusers are everywhere, and they're just as much in the church as outside of the church, and they're looking for occasions to commit these crimes. And in that country, just percentage-wise, there has been a lot of abuse, and maybe there's still a lot of abuse. But also the problem with a church that is so powerful is that they can also cover it up. And it's thanks to the media, thanks to journalists, thanks to in a certain way also our secularized society in the West, that a lot of that abuse has been stopped and has come to the light. And that's what I hope, that in Poland, this abuse will be uncovered and that the perpetrators will be punished and will be put in jail to protect the victims. And I hope the victims will be acknowledged and will be believed. But that's an uphill battle in a country where the Catholic Church is so powerful. And again, this is something that also happens outside of the church. And there too, people have to act. And we live in very important times where more and more victims are starting to speak up. And that has disastrous consequences for the church. But I would say, so be it. I think we should be ready as priests, as bishops, as church members to suffer if that helps the victims. And it may destroy a lot of the power of the church. So be it. Good for us. Because we're not supposed to be anything better than our master, who is Jesus, and he suffered out of love, and he was abused and punished and cruelly tortured and died because of the cruelty of people. And so when the church suffers because of these scandals, I think we need to carry that cross, because Jesus carried that cross and he wants us to follow him. Let's see. I think we're almost through the comments right now. One question, a chat. Seabaz wants to know what are the headphones that I'm using and what is the microphone. This microphone is a Heil PR40. It's a very good microphone. A bit on the expensive side, but I've been using it for 6 years now, and it's awesome. A microphone is a one-time investment, and it sounds really good. Makes my voice sound really radio-like. The headphones are Beyerdynamics DT770 Pro, and these are standard headphones that are used all over the place in the world of radio. That's why I bought them, because, well, they have such a good reputation. Jamie loves the podcast music. Feels like she's in Disneyland. I don't look 51. I look 35, according to Jamie. Well, thank you so much. But, well, as I said, just be a geek. Oh, apparently, according to some, there is no video anymore. Interesting. Oh, yeah, the camera froze. I don't know why. They can still hear me, but they can't see me. Oh, well. It's what happens from time to time. All right, that's a good reason for me to wrap things up. So, yeah, I apologize to those of you that are watching this on YouTube and have been staring at my face. They're completely frozen. I don't know why this camera, the camera is still working. I guess it's a software issue. It's still a hack that enables me to use the M50 for this. Anywho, thank you so much for listening, at least. And I'll be back on YouTube with more Lego and more games. Just stay tuned and make sure you hit that bell icon so you get a notification whenever I go live. All right, thanks to my patrons. That's who I'm recording this for. Thank you so much for your support. You make all this awesomeness possible. And I'm not talking about myself, but about being able to reach out. You know what I mean. Take care. God bless. Alrighty. Time to prepare some food. I'm starving. It's 8:15. All right. Bye-bye now.